The raid on Nekhl was the second of 3 battles by British forces to recapture the Sinai Peninsula during the Sinai and Palestine campaign of World War I. Egyptian Expeditionary Force mounted forces traveled into the center of the Sinai Peninsula to attack and push the last Ottoman Army garrisons back into Palestine. Nekhl had been a regional center for British administration until the beginning of the war, when Ottoman Empire forces invaded the area. During the raid on the Suez Canal in February 1915, part of the attacking force had moved through Nekhl. By February 1917, the Ottoman garrisons in the region were well behind the EEF front line. As the occupation of southern Palestine began, these isolated forces were attacked and pushed back into Ottoman Palestine. Background: both the coast road via El Arish and the road from Man via Nekhl to the Suez Canal were guarded by British ships on the Mediterranean coast and the Gulf of Aqaba respectively. Kress von Kressenstein's force, which attacked the canal in February 1915, had moved along the Central Way across the Sinai Desert, making use of the water available at Qasima and Nekhl. Ottoman forces continued to occupy the area on the Central Way across the Sinai south from El Qasima towards the Suez Canal, including Bir el Hassana and Nekhl, which was a town of about 50 mud and stone houses, with a mosque and a fort, located in an area where lack of water and extreme climate made sustained warfare by either side impossible. Nekhl had been an important outpost at the beginning of the war for the British administration, 60 miles east of Suez. By 1917 it was still an important outpost from which Ottoman authority over the Arabs and Bedouin could be reinforced. Prelude: the final actions of the Sinai campaign were ordered by General Murray against Nekhl and Bir el Hassana. Intelligence branch of the General Staff had advised that after withdrawing from the Sinai as a result of the EEF advance along the coastal road, a force of 130 hostile soldiers was still deployed at Nekhl. On 6 February, Southern Canal Section ordered the 11th Light Horse Regiment, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel W. Grant, to prepare for operations against Nekhl, including the cutting of communications between Nekhl and El Arya. El Arya was linked to northern Palestine via Beersheba. A second column was to march from Magdaba to attack Bir el Hassana 40 miles north of Nekhl between the Gebel Halal and the Gebel Yelek. 2 mounted columns set out from the Suez Canal on 13 February 1917. Northern column consisting of 420 troopers in the 11th Light Horse Regiment, 1 Royal Engineer officer and 4 other ranks, 1 Royal Army Medical Corps officer with a detachment from 124th Field Ambulance Street 26, 1 Royal Flying Corps officer and 2 other ranks and 2 wireless pack stations, rode out from Serapeum near Ismailia in the center of the canal. Lieutenant Colonel A.W. Jennings Bramley, Captain F.D. Sterling, and Lieutenant A.H. Stewart, along with 1 aircraft observer and 2 mechanics, to choose advanced landing ground and supervise the transportation of petrol, oil and spare parts, accompanied the force. By 14 February the column concentrated at Zonia, where a supply dump had been established. Meanwhile, Southern column, consisting of the 6th Mounted Brigade headquarters, with yeomanry from this brigade, and the Indian 58th Rifles, rode out from Suez at the southern end of the Suez Canal, via Heniak, Insudr, the Mitla Pass and the Darb el-Hajj towards Nekhl. 3 aircraft from No. 1 Squadron based at El Arish worked from the aerodrome of No. 57 Reserve Squadron at Ismailia during the raid, were to report daily on the progress of the 2 columns, drop messages from headquarters and scout ahead. while a yeomanry force marched from Suez via the Mitla Pass and the Darb el-Hajj. Northern Column advanced to Bir el-Gidi on 15 February, where a detachment of 60 rifles from No. 9 Company, Imperial Camel Corps joined the column from Shalufa. Here, an officers' patrol commanded by Lieutenant Farlow reported that the Marda well silted up and no water was available there. Instead of the proposed 3 nights, this information meant only 2 nights could be spent at an advanced base to be established near Nekhl. As a result, a group was sent ahead by Northern Column to the Marda to do their best to obtain a water supply, while that column followed from Bir el-Gidi in cold and wet weather, after giving the horses time to get a good drink. On arrival at the Marda, 4 wells had been dug to an average of 8 feet. Each of the wells had 4 feet of water, which was maintained during pumping water for the whole regiment. Major Bassett, commanding 2nd Battalion, Imperial Camel Corps, marched from Magdaba on 17 February to surround Bir el-Hassana, where at dawn the next morning they attacked the Ottoman Army garrison consisting of 3 officers and 19 other ranks, reinforced by armed Bedouin. During the attack, a severely wounded soldier was flown back to El Arish by aircraft. After the surrender of Bir el-Hassana, Bassett's force remained in position to capture any Ottoman force withdrawing back from Nekhl towards Bir el-Hassana. Raid. On 17 February, Northern Column sent an officers' patrol commanded by Lieutenant F. C. Farlow to select a site for an advanced base and to reconnoiter the Thil-Wetel el-Thammamat Pass, 4 miles north of Nekhl. The patrol reported at 15:30 that 3 shots had been fired from high ground on the Bir el-Hassana road shortly after 1300 by a Bedouin who subsequently withdrew on his camel towards Nekhl. By 1600, Northern Column reached 7 miles north of Nekhl, where an advanced base was established. The Farlow's patrol sent back a report which was received at 1645 that the pass was unoccupied but that men could be seen withdrawing from Nekhl towards the east. Farlow requested support as he was pushing on in pursuit, and B Squadron 11th Light Horse Regiment rode out at 1710. Meanwhile, Farlow's patrol captured 4 enemy soldiers with 10 camels, but they were prevented from crossing the plain by rifle fire from about 50 defenders. In the foothills where the Nekhl to Aqaba road leaves the plain to the east of Nekhl, an aircraft which landed at Grant's advanced base shortly after B Squadron left was sent to reconnoiter Nekhl. It returned at 1740 to report the town unoccupied and no sign of any enemy soldiers on the roads to the east. B Squadron, commanded by Captain C. A. R. Munro, entered Nekhl at 1945, riding with fixed bayonets. Quote, 2 Bedouin and 1 Ottoman soldier were captured in the town. The 100 cavalry garrison at Nekhl, warned by Bedouin of the British advance, had withdrawn in the direction of Aqaba. They left behind a field gun and 11 prisoners. As it was dark, further movement was impossible and the squadron bivouacked in the town with a defensive cordon while the plain was patrolled during the night. All 3 aircraft landed at Bir el-Marda, where they camped with Northern Column during a very cold night. During the evening of 17 February, 2 prisoners disclosed that 6 Ottoman soldiers were expected to return that evening from Bir el-Hassana with rations. A detachment from the Imperial Camel Brigade sent to intercept them captured 6 camels with stores, while the 2 Bedouin driving the camels escaped. At 4 o'clock on the 18th of February, the main force of Northern Column left their advanced base and entered Nekhl at 6 o'clock, when 2 more prisoners and abandoned arms, ammunition and stores were captured. Patrols sent out eastwards up to a distance of 15 miles failed to find any hostile soldiers. Heliographic communication was established by Northern Column with Southern Column at 8:30, that column reaching Nekhl at 9:05. After a thorough search of the town and the demolishing of a captured field gun, Southern Column commenced the return journey at 10:30. Later another 2 Arab were found hiding in the hills, along with 1 Ottoman soldier who was killed while trying to escape. Aftermath. Prisoners' statements reported Nekhl had been garrisoned by 40 armed Bedouin and 24 Ottoman soldiers, commanded by an Ottoman officer and an Arab foe effendi, both of whom escaped. Telegraph and telephone wires were cut and posts removed before Northern Column returned to their advanced base for the night. They began the journey back on the morning of the 19th of February, traveling via Bir el-Gidi, where the Northern Column camped on 20 and the 21st of February. Southern and Northern Columns made the round trip of some 120 miles in harsh desert conditions. Daily rations weighing 4 pounds and 1 gallon of water per man and 20 pounds of compressed fodder and 6 gallons per horse were transported by 1,600 camels of N and Q companies of the Camel Transport Corps commanded by Captain Swallow. The camels, practically all of which were Somalis, worked well, covering more than 20 miles a day. Communications were maintained by the 2 wireless telegraph pack sections with Northern Column, but communication with Southern Column was only by aircraft messages of visual signaling, which was difficult in the country 2 columns moved through. The aircraft kept contact with the 2 columns as they converged from the east and south on Nekhl, dropping messages from headquarters and scouting ahead when necessary. On the 17th of February, when the columns were not far from Nekhl, air reconnaissance found the village abandoned, and an extensive air reconnaissance the next day found no sign of the enemy in the area 17 miles beyond Nekhl. However, late arrival of aircraft and engine trouble meant important messages to General Pitt were never delivered. Aerial reconnaissance also had difficulty finding small groups of troops. 1 aircraft failed to see the whole of Northern Column when it flew over. Citations